Hey, lifers, welcome back to the Live the Life podcast. I am your host, Eric Aroca. And today we are live at a really cool place. So, as you all know, I have been substitute teaching this past school year, and I am at my favorite school that I had the opportunity to substitute at. So, I am in Lindsay Elementary with the one and only y'all, Principal Stover.
Oh,
Principal Stover, thank you for coming on.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You betcha. We're so excited. I am really excited. I know I talked to you about this early on this year about being on the podcast, and we finally made time.
We did. Thank you for
You
waiting
are
till
very, you
summertime.
are very, very busy, even in the summertime.
Yes.
But we're super excited to have you here and talk a little bit about culture and what you've done to establish a great school culture here at the school. Now, I'm just going to throw this out there, but um, this past year, probably last year and a half, there was a new school being built, a brand new elementary school, and I'm just going to be honest with you and let you know that in my neighborhood,
Yes.
where we are, I guess that's our new school.
Yeah.
We have a lot of upset parents because their kids can no longer come to this school. So I think that speaks volumes about what you've done here at the school. So before we really jump into what you've done to create just an amazing, what I think is an amazing school culture, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your educational background and how and why did you decide to become a principal?
Okay.
And by the way, y'all, I'm in the principal's office yet again. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I have been in education for 16 years. I began my journey actually not to be a teacher at all. I love kids. They're my passion. They're my life. Have grown up loving kids. I thought I wanted to give all that love and passion to my own children someday when I went down my educational journey of becoming what did I want to be when I grew up. I thought in my mind, I don't want to be around kids all day because then how am I going to have energy and time left for my kids when I get home in the evening? I actually went to nursing school
Oh wow.
and passed out multiple times and was like, this is probably not the path for me. I ended up graduating in 4 years and then coming home and was like, okay, what next? Prayed about it a lot. What am I supposed to do next in my journey? And it kind of led me to education, and started subbing kind of the similar
Okay.
pathway. Subbed, and then my mom was actually a school nurse, so I had spent some time in the school,
Um,
and then was like, you know what? Talked to my aunt who was also a teacher, and they just said it was different. It was different with your own kids than it was with your actual children. So that kind of led me down to become alternatively certified, and I got my master's at the same time. In very quickly after that, I take that back because I did have a principal that inspired me to get my master's in my principalship. Seeing different leadership skills within me, within the classroom, and on my team, and really inspired me. And so that has been something that I've carried with me, to inspire young leaders as well. And see things in people, we don't always see things in ourselves that others see in us. And so that's something important. But to continue the path, I taught early childhood's my favorite. I love the pre-K babies.
me too. Me too. I
I
love
know
them. They're so
they're
cute.
so fun, so sweet. If you need a break, just that's mental health right there. You
Yep.
go in and you'll get a
Exactly.
hug and watch them dance their hearts out.
Yep.
Loved pre-K, but then moved up to kindergarten and opened a new campus. I've opened 3 new campuses actually, and gotten to be a part
Wow.
of building that culture and watch how others do that. I've also taught third grade. I've been a coach, like an instructional coach for the ESL students. So that's the English as a second
Yeah.
language students. I actually opened this campus with that position,
Awesome.
and then moved into the position of assistant principal on the same campus, and then became the principal 4 years after that. And now I've been the principal for a couple of years here now.
Wow. That is a
Yeah,
ride,
it has
right?
been a
Oh
ride.
my
Yeah,
gosh.
I've learned a lot. I've been in 3 different districts as well, and so that's been amazing to see and learn how different cultures
Yeah.
are, how it's different in each place. There's good and bad in everything that you do in every district. And so it's just neat to see like what your values are and
Yeah.
what fits you best, and
Yeah.
kind of leaning on those things.
Well, you mentioned some things that are just very dear to the podcast.
Oh, really?
So, not this first thing, but I was wondering, the fainting as a nursing
Yeah.
student, was that just the sight of blood? Was it needles? Like, what was
Well,
it?
needles and surgery.
Oh
So
my
watching,
gosh.
yeah, I watching an IV be put in, which is pretty basic.
Oh yeah.
That
I can't
was
do that.
rough.
Yeah.
And so really just the needle and the giving blood together. I could give shots fine, but then I did pass out in surgery too. But it was a knee replacement, and those are actually very
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah.
Much more intense than I ever anticipated.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah,
I don't do well. I can take a shot, get a shot, but if I have to watch somebody's blood being
yeah,
drawn, I can't do it. I go instantly lightheaded,
yep.
instantly pale.
That was
That's right, y'all. This tan disappears. I go white like this and I pass out.
That
So,
was my experience
okay.
as well.
Good
Yep.
to know. Good to know. Surgery actually never bothered me. So I have my background is in pharmaceutical and medical device sales.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I cut my teeth and spent quite a few years doing that. And that just enabled me to be able to go in and observe surgeries because they were either using my product or using an implant or
Yes.
a drug or something like
Mhm.
that. So surgeons would always invite me into their OR, which was always a lot of fun. So surgeries never really bothered me, but yeah, if I have to watch somebody get blood, no, thank you at all. Okay, so you said some things that were really dear to the podcast, things that I want to make sure that we don't just pass over.
Yeah.
You mentioned passion.
Mhm.
So we've talked a lot about on the podcast about living a life with passion, right? And it's not we've we have identified passion as or um, really come to like agree that passion isn't just something that we like to do, right?
Mhm.
It's not just it's not one of those things that you like. It's one of those things that it's maybe like a calling in life or
Mhm.
something that draws you to something. And so I was really happy to hear that you were passionate about education and kind of starting in that journey of becoming a teacher and then ultimately in to where you are now as a principal. So that was the first thing that really caught my attention as you were speaking. The second thing was that you invoked prayer as part of your journey.
Mhm.
That's big on me. That's
Yeah.
big on many of our listeners out there. As
Mhm.
a Christian,
Mhm.
and I just really believe that we make better decisions in our life
Yeah.
if we turn to the Lord. So
Absolutely. I
I
agree
loved
with that.
hearing that. So
Yep.
thank you for sharing that so
Definitely
much.
my foundation. So.
And then I would say the third thing was that you kind of had a mentor along the way,
Mhm.
right? That you had another principal, I believe, correct?
Mhm.
That inspired you or kind of helped you and maybe even pushed you a little bit
Yeah.
along the way to get you here. What would you say is maybe like the one or two things that principal did to kind of get you started and to kind of give you that confidence that yeah, I can do this. I can see myself becoming a teacher or becoming a principal down the road. What would you say maybe those one or two things would be?
I would say definitely, just having the conversation with me of just, have you ever, it truly was a sitting down of, every year we meet with our administrators at the end of the year to kind of review our years. And I remember it was at the end, my end of the year review, it was like my third year of teaching. And she was just like, have you ever thought of becoming a principal one day? And I remember being like, no, actually. And in fact, I recently even talked with my mentor or my current supervisor, and she just was like, well, what are your future goals? And I'm guilty of, I'm very passionate about what I'm currently doing, no matter what it is. So, as a classroom teacher, like that was my life, that was my heart, that's where I was putting all my time and effort, didn't necessarily look
Yeah.
beyond that. So I did appreciate her challenging me in that way of, what are your next steps? Are you going to be in the classroom for a long time? And if not, then I really see you with those leadership skills.
Yeah.
So just kind of seeing that in me and then kind of pushing me to kind of make those next steps.
Awesome. That's a good mentor right there because
Absolutely. Hmm.
that's an excellent mentor because I think mentors really come into play and I think are really valuable when you get a mentor that's willing to push you and have those difficult conversations with you,
Hmm.
then I think it's extremely valuable to have a mentor. If you just have a mentor, if you want just somebody to agree with you on
Hmm.
everything, then I mean, you can get that on social media, right?
Yeah.
So sounds like you had a really great mentor. So
Hmm.
that's great to hear that. So let's jump into culture a little bit,
Okay.
because you did have the opportunity to witness culture in three other districts,
Hmm.
and I have as well. I have, been to tons of different districts, not only here in the state of Texas, but in Utah, where I'm from, and then throughout the country as I go and speak at different schools and different places. And
Hmm.
so, um, culture has always been an interesting thing for me. I love walking into a school and just seeing how people act, just how do they behave on a day to day, right?
Hmm.
There's no cameras,
Right.
just how do you act? So I want to ask you, how did you set the tone for Lindsay Elementary's culture? What did you do specifically to set that tone?
Absolutely. So, kind of, I mentioned my journey as far as being here as an instructional coach. Was called an ESL facilitator at the time, and then moving into the assistant principal role, and then moving into the principalship. But we are really big on team aspect. I think that you probably felt that here. There's nothing.
Yes.
There's nothing here like we are one team. Where they're
Mhm.
our students. They're our kids. They're not mine. They're not. You're the classroom teacher. They're not your kids only. They're ours. And so from the day we opened our doors, we opened that way. We opened with, we are all hands on deck. We are a team here. We're going to support you, and no matter what you do, and that started with a core team of a leadership team of, we're here to support you, and my librarian will go and help with behavior in the classroom, and if
Yeah,
she
I've
needs
seen
to,
I've
yeah,
seen that. I've
yeah,
seen that.
right.
Yes.
So it's just there's nothing that any of us won't do, and I think that's we opened our doors day one that way, and we still are that way. I'll go be a crossing guard if I need to, or I'll
Yeah.
go, if the trash needs to be taken out, I'll help take the trash out in the moment, right? So I think that says a lot too, and hopefully you've been here and seen it, from us greeting students at the
Yeah.
door down to walking them to the class, down to, the teachers need to feel just as supported as the students do,
Yeah.
and I think that's a big piece.
Yeah, that's one of the things that struck me walking into the school. It's just from everyone, it's just feeling welcome. It's just that feeling that you are welcome to be here. Like
Mm-hmm.
we want you here
Yeah.
and grateful that you are here. And so that's been great. And I have seen that. I have been fortunate that I never had to call admin, right?
Right.
But I will say that in speaking to other teachers that have had to call admin, that they always speak of admin in such high regard, because when they call, when they get on that walkie and they say
Mhm.
we need admin wherever it is, that you guys are there. Maybe not there like 20 seconds later, okay?
Sometimes
But sometimes,
there.
but you're there, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't take hours or anything like that for you guys to
Mhm.
show up. It's you guys are there, and you're there to diffuse the situation and to take that student away from that environment and get them to calm down and you know
Mhm.
do right by the student, right? Because at the end of the day, we got to do right by them.
Mhm.
And so I think that you guys have done that extremely well. And that I think that's something you should be very proud of, not only for yourself, but just your entire staff.
Mhm.
Because I've seen it firsthand. And like I said, luckily I haven't had to use it, and hopefully I never will. But I love the fact that it's there,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So
Mhm.
great job. Um, do you have any traditions or rituals that have kind of helped out the community, like the greater community, or just your in school community, right? Your staff, your faculty, the students.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually do a lot here. I mean,
Yeah.
you've been here, you've been on our campus. Sometimes it's like, how do you do as much as you do? And it is exhausting. I'm not going to lie. And I am hard to get a hold of because we plan, three events in one day just because why not, right?
Yeah.
But it's truly about growing the whole child, and it's not about just educating our kids in reading, writing, and math, and science and social studies. But it's truly, we want our kids to be good citizens when they leave us. And so that involves, what does it look like in the community? What do we want for our campus for the community, right? And So we have events after school, and I will say, our people show up. They love the events after school, and we love that they love them. I love getting to know the families. We have so many families that have been here for years and years, and so I know their parents well. I see them out and about in the community, and I love weaving at them and speaking with them. And this year, we tried to open some things up after school. One of my favorite things that we did was, and we have a great organization, a parent teacher organization, that supports us, and
Yeah.
they're here often. And the great thing about them is that they have supported us in our vision. So a lot of times you can have that organization run by parents, and they have their own agenda.
Yeah.
But we have really created this partnership between the two of us of like, they come to me, what do we need as a campus, what do you see, because they know I'm living and breathing it. And so I do really appreciate that from them. And that being said, we saw a need for community events, and so they did. We did a free outdoor movie one night, which was so
Yeah.
neat for the neighbors to just come and walk up here and bring their lawn chairs and watch a movie outside. And
Yeah.
we had a spring carnival, and so that was really neat too, for them to come and be able to be a part of that. We have our academic nights as well
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
science. We have a very successful um, academic night where we highlight science and reading and math and all of the things, which is super fun.
Yeah.
And then we have an international night as well. So anytime we can invite the community here to represent their culture, to partake and get to know other community members, because this is the center of the community, and you don't get to know your neighbors as well as we used to
Yeah.
back in the
That's
day,
true.
right?
That's
Like
true.
being
Yeah.
outside, kids aren't outside riding their bikes as
No.
often and just
No.
hanging out and running outside and playing as
Yeah.
much. And so when parents get to know each other through those events, then they feel more comfortable sending
Sure.
their kids out to play with each other and things like that
Yeah.
within the community.
Yeah. Very much so. I'm just sad that that's gone.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was just telling my grandson the other day. Do you remember Kai?
Yes,
So it's my grandson.
I
Shout
remember.
out to Kai. So I was just telling Kai the other day that, you know, summer vacation would come and we would have breakfast by 8 a.m., 9 a.m. And that was the last we saw of our parents for summer break, right? It's like the whole day we were outside and we didn't come back in until the street lights came on.
Yeah.
And then we still had another 45 minutes, really before we had to start heading home. And in fact, it was just that generation that our parents needed to even be reminded that they even had kids, right? Because the 10 o'clock commercial would come on the TV to say, "Do you know where your kids are?" Right? So depending on what part of the country you're on, it was either 9, 10, or 11, but ours was 10 o'clock. So just different times, right?
Yep.
But I'm happy to see that you do so much to include the greater community, because I feel like the more involved they can be, then the more involved they also are in helping to support your culture and the things that you have established here at the school. So I think really it just ends up being a win-win, right?
Absolutely. And it builds that trust.
Yeah.
We are taking care of their children for the day, for 8 hours a day. We have them more during the week than they do.
Yeah.
And so building that trust is important. Safety is a big thing. So making sure we are a safe campus and they feel safe with us. And, a lot of times when they're upset about something, I'll personally call them and I'll talk to them and they'll say, "Oh, I understand," or I get why you did that now. And
Yeah.
so just being able to talk through those things, and them knowing too, again, I've had the opportunity to be here for 7 years. And so they at this point know my heart behind things.
Yeah.
Right. And so I do appreciate them too, asking me questions, and because I think through processes a lot. And I
Yeah.
think, there's a lot of systems in place here, and we have a lot of kids. So it does take a lot to plan these big events and these, our day to day, to
Yeah.
run a school day to day. So just to be able to talk to that and have that relationship with them.
So speaking of events, I'm
Oh,
smiling
yeah.
because you know where I'm going. So my wife, Selena, last year was hired on.
Yes.
So thank you for hiring
Of
her.
course.
She
She's
just loves it
wonderful.
here.
I know.
And she would always talk to me about Lindsay and Lindsay and Lindsay. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, like easy,
Yes.
And so she loves it here. But before the kids came back to school last August, was it in July that you guys had that event?
So
Sometime.
yeah, so I know where you're going with this. So
Okay.
it's
Do you want to tell us about that event?
absolutely. So kind of part of building our culture, and like you said, it's what you see, it's what you feel, it's all of the things. It's not just me. part of that I wanted to just mention is that, like, whenever we have candidates that come in, I always ask them at the end if they have any questions for us. One thing they usually ask is, what is the culture like here at Lindsay?
Mm-hmm.
And I never answer that question, because, I know what I want the culture to feel like. I know what I think the culture feels like, but the staff is living and breathing it, right? And so I always turn to a teacher and I say, why don't you answer that question within an interview?
Yeah.
And so I let them answer that question to any candidate. So a big piece of building that culture and setting our school year off is that always the first day back for teachers. And so we always try to make it just a fun day, building relationships with your team, building relationships with our staff together, but just making it a fun day. And so this year our theme was rock and roll. We always try to do something around the
Yeah.
theme. And so with that piece, I was like, well, and to be honest, rock and roll is not really my thing.
Oh, you would never know
I'm
it.
more of a country music type girl, to be honest.
Okay.
So, our team's planning this. The whole staff is excited about the theme, and I'm like, I'm gonna own it. Like, if we're doing it, we're gonna go big. So yes, I dressed up like Kiss. I had the whole costume, the platform
Yeah.
shoes, rock and
Awesome.
roll. So then, the staff comes in, and we like to surprise them. They at this point they don't know what's going to happen
Right.
ever. We just say expect the unexpected. We
Right.
usually tell them what to wear that day, and that's it. And so it could be anything from going to a lake. We took them to a lake one year, but again this year I was Kissed. So they walk in, the lights are off, or maybe they were on and we just turned them off, and then all of a sudden we opened the stage doors and smoke came out and there was Kiss. Truly, I had full makeup, I had the wig, I had everything, and then I just rocked it for a while. Walked through the staff, and just it was a pretty fun moment to just see the staff excited, and
Yeah.
that's why we're here to
I wish I could have seen it firsthand. Seriously. So my wife, Selena, she came home and she started talking about the day and the events
Yes.
and things like that. But her face just lit up when she talked about that. And
Oh,
when she
good.
said, "Oh yeah," and then there was smoke, and
Yeah.
then they came out dressed as Kiss, and I'm like, "You got to be kidding me! Are you serious?" You won me right there. Like right there, you had me.
I
You had
love
me
it.
at Kiss, and I
Yes.
was like, rock and roll all night and study every day. Something
Absolutely,
like that. We're
absolutely.
gonna change it a little bit. Okay, excellent. So I think that also goes a long way in helping to build very authentic relationships with your staff.
Mhm.
So besides the fun things,
Yeah.
what other things do you do that you want to make sure that you do on a yearly basis that helps to create and foster those really strong relationships with your staff? Because I have been at other schools, um, and they'll say, "So where have you subbed before?" And I'll say, "Oh, I sub at Lindsay quite a bit,"
Yeah.
And one teacher, I don't even remember her name, but she's now Lindsay Lyon, right? So she came up to me and she said, "Oh my gosh, I just interviewed there, and I'm going there next year, so I can't wait to go there."
Oh, good.
So good for you.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. But so it's not just parents and it's not just kids that want to come here, but you have other teachers who also want to come and teach here. And I think that also speaks volumes for your school and the things that you've done. So talk to us a little bit about, aside from the fun things, what else do you do to build those authentic relationships and be able to show those teachers that support that they, I would say, very much deserve.
Absolutely. So, we did talk a lot about the fun things, and that's a huge piece of it. And we play and have fun, and that's important, right? To celebrate all the hard work our students and staff do. But the other piece too is, teaching is a lot of work, and we get that, and so we work really hard. We work hard. We put a lot of effort and time into planning, because if we plan well, then we're going to teach well. Hopefully, things go awry and different things. But the biggest thing is support. How are we going to support our teachers? So, we have people in place, and we've hired well. We have amazing coaches. I talked about my core team earlier. They're going
Hmm.
to sit. My coach is going to sit and plan with teachers. If they're confused, they're going to stay after school with them. They're going to draw out the lesson for them. How about trying it this way? And so we're collaboration. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Um, and then we plan together. The expectation is that the teachers meet together and they plan together. We always say the answer's in the room somewhere.
Right.
And we all think and learn different, just like our students. So if we have different personalities on a team, sometimes it's hard to work with people that are different than you, but it's
Sure.
important because we teach students that are
Yeah.
all different than us. So
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is supporting them. I don't sit down. Like I'm out and
Yeah.
about all the time. It's really hard to catch me in the office. I'm terrible at
Yeah.
responding to emails sometimes because I do apologize.
She's doing the important work, okay?
I
So there's that. Email is
so
not that
yeah,
critical.
and I get a lot of them, believe it or not. But
I believe it.
I don't sit at my desk during the day and answer emails. You know, I'm out supporting teachers, answering calls, you know, watching the amazing teaching that's happening here in this building. I like to sit in on plannings, and
Yeah.
so kind of being in the work is important. And then just building teams too, with, you know, hiring is a big piece of it. Hiring teams where they complement each other well. You know, we had, like you mentioned, the other campus opening last year, and so we had a lot of shifting on our campus,
Mm-hmm.
with positions and things
Yeah.
like that. Um, and so it was a lot of, you know, challenging teachers and saying, hey, I really can see you moving to this grade level. And that's hard. Change is
Yes.
hard for
Yes.
anybody, whether it's changing a school or changing a grade level as a teacher. Changing
Yes.
just even changing a classroom is hard. But, you know, seeing that in them and telling them the reasons why. And, you know, I had a ton of those teachers that I challenged. They came up to me sometime throughout the school year and had said, you know, you were right. And I said,
Yeah.
I know I was right. Like I saw that in you and I knew you could do it. And so that was amazing to hear them say those things and then watch their successes throughout the school year. It
Yeah.
was really awesome.
Yeah. And you know, some that change is not always easy, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're I think if you are really used to teaching fifth grade, for example, or fourth grade, and I don't know how dramatic, you know, the changes were, but let's say that it's fifth or fourth grade, and then all of a sudden you're told to go to kindergarten,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
I
that's like that's pretty.
don't think I had any that
Not maybe not
drastic,
not like that,
but yeah,
but
any
this
change.
still it
Mm-hmm.
still, you know, gets you out of your comfort zone, and you have to kind of get used to. So it is, you know, change is difficult, but I love that as a leader that you are there to kind of show them the way and to show them or to have that conversation with them that lets them know, hey, I see you doing this. I see you being successful in this new role. You know, now go out and embrace it. And kudos to your teachers for embracing it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
Because I mean, like I said, change is not easy, but hey, it's the only constant, right? It's the only thing that we can depend on.
Yeah.
What challenges have you had, or can you maybe specify like one big challenge that you've had in building your culture, and how did you get through that? Because I've always preached that our values will get us through any challenges that we have in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a leader of an organization, whether it be a school or a company, if I hire people who believe what I believe or who believe in the organization's values, then hey, we've got something. We've got the right people on the bus, right?
Mm-hmm.
We may not always agree on everything, but
Right.
we've got the right people on the bus because we believe the same things.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you talk a little bit about maybe a challenge that you faced along the way, and then your values helped you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to pinpoint just one, and naturally, right off the bat, you say that, and my mind goes straight to COVID, right? Like that was, I think,
Oh
one of
yeah,
the
well hey,
biggest, easiest challenge
it
to like
rocked all
right
of our
off the bat.
worlds.
Yeah, and one thing we just did about culture was, you know, and you've heard this a lot, I'm sure, just education was the one thing that just took it and had to run with it. Like we didn't have a choice, right? We went to virtual classes. How are we teaching virtually and those type of things? But then like to build our culture and still have that, I still remember Teacher Appreciation Week. We had created like a you know, in the past, or typically in a Teacher Appreciation Week, we kind of celebrate the teachers Monday through Friday. And so we created a drive-through Teachers Appreciation Week, and we had, you know, Monday through Friday
Oh
tables set up
wow,
labeled Monday through Friday, and they got to drive through, and we had treats that we handed them through the windows. So because
that's
there is still,
awesome.
you know, having, I can't even think of the word, 6 feet away from each other in all of
Yeah,
those
yeah, six
spaces.
feet. Yeah,
Um,
social distancing.
I wanted to say social,
Thank goodness we don't
social
use those two
distancing.
words anymore.
So we had created that for our staff, but then it goes down to just the little things that, like you mentioned, disagreements, learning to embrace that. You know, I don't, like I mentioned, our team, my admin team, my core team that we like rely on a lot, is we have disagreements often, but that's good because that shows
Yeah,
that we, you know, we think differently and we're going to work through the problem, and it's okay to disagree. And
yeah,
one thing that I love that our students do here is we teach them how to disagree. And so we have a lot of conversations, and um, they have conversations in class, and they will talk through a math problem, and one student will say, I disagree, because we
Mm-hmm.
teach them that it's okay to disagree and
Yeah.
how to talk through that. And that's a life skill.
Yeah.
That's a life skill that you don't necessarily aren't really taught how to disagree.
Yep.
And we're trying to teach that here in our everyday life. But yeah, I don't know, my values truly are just that servant leadership
Yeah.
piece and loving others. I think that that's um, my goal and my vision in life is to like serve where I'm at, and to love others as I can through that, and to build teams that feel the same way. Like, we're
Yeah.
here for these kids, and we're going to love them. They don't have, it's not their choice to be here. We had a lot of students move in this year. We had a lot of,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of the conversations we had of like, as you as a teacher, it's inconvenient for you to get a new kid every other day, or
Yeah.
it wasn't that frequently, but
Or
feels
even
like
like
it
in the middle of
sometimes.
December or something like that. You're
Right.
well into the school year, and here you got two new
Right.
kids, and
And, we had an increase. We have an increase in, building out here. And so we are getting, I mean, we would get one every other week sometimes.
sure.
And so to have them, the teachers just shift their mindset of, it's not these kids' fault. And yes, it's hard to get a new student because it changes your whole class dynamic, just
Yeah.
getting one student. Um, but think about how that student's feeling as they walk in your door, right?
I know.
They probably don't want to be there either.
Right.
They might have a fun new house, but they left their friends and they left
Yeah.
their community. And so how can we embrace them and love
Yeah.
them, and
They may have loved
through
their school
this?
that they just left, right? And they're
Absolutely.
uncertain as to what is this place going to
Hmm.
be like.
And
So
so just knowing we're here for every kid, and knowing like it's every learner every day, whatever it
yeah.
takes. And so we all learn differently, and they had this one student's low, this one student's high, but how are we going to meet both of
Yeah.
their needs?
So what were the three values that you guys always talked about in the announcements? You guys would end with
Yes.
this. So what were those
So
three
was it the
values?
be respectful, be
Yeah.
responsible, and be ready?
Yeah.
Yes. So those are our three, yes, things that we say every single day on the announcements. But then we've taken it a step further, and we've identified what that looks like in every
Yeah.
part of the school. So what does that look like in the hallway to be ready? What does it look like to be
Yeah.
respectful and to be ready? And
Sure.
those are three easy things to say to students to remind them, like, what is it going to look like when you have a guest teacher in your classroom today? What is it
Yeah.
going to look like when you're on a field trip today? And they knew those terms, and they knew them well. And
Yeah.
so they were able to articulate them to us, and then say, what does it look like in the cafeteria? And then that way they knew the expectations everywhere.
Yep.
And then kind of we have a mindset too of their, like I said, our kids. And so when there are kids, we know that, if another teacher corrects your class in the hallway, it's not because you're doing the wrong thing and they're calling you out as a teacher. It's because you're probably exhausted and you've told them a million things.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have a partner and a teammate
Yeah.
that's now, just like, hey, remember to walk this way in the hallway. It has to be quiet
Yeah. We're in the hallway.
because we're in the hallway. And if everyone's talking in the hallway, we can't teach in the
Yep.
classrooms. And
Catch a
so,
bubble.
yep.
That was my favorite phrase. Catch a bubble.
Catch a bubble. So we have, those three things: be ready, be respectful, and be ready. And so,
Yeah, those are awesome. I love that. I love that every morning it was clockwork, right? You guys ended all the announcements with that, and I thought it was great because as a substitute coming into the school, I could just that's how I started every single day that I came in. As a teacher, there's many ways that I could start my day,
Mhm.
but I would always say, "Hey, I am Mr. A, and I am ready, right, to be
Yeah.
respectful, to be responsible, and I'm ready to teach."
Hmm.
Right? So that lets the kids know, oh my gosh, okay, this guy gets it. Like he believes what we believe because they just chanted it,
Yeah.
right? And I thought that was a fun way to fun way to start my day. But also, I thought, it would only be something that happened here, right?
Hmm.
But I found myself going to other elementary schools and talking about those same three
Yeah.
R's,
Okay.
right? So that became how I started every single class, every single elementary. I didn't use it in high school, but every single every single elementary that I did
Hmm.
where I subbed, that's how I started my class,
Okay.
and it really helped me
Hmm.
just to remind me to be respectful as a teacher. Because if I'm wanting them to be respectful, well, shouldn't I also be respectful to them,
Hmm.
right? Shouldn't I be ready to teach? And so that really helped out a lot. So great. That's awesome. I love that. I think values go a long way, and I, w- so at Live the Life, we always say that values are the disinfectant to our culture, right? Many times we don't have to tell people to leave because of our values, because if they don't believe what we believe, it's going to show.
Mm-hmm.
If you have teachers who are not servants, right, who don't lead with that servanthood, mentality, they're going to feel out of place, right, and then they're going to want to leave on their own. So we probably rarely have to ever let anybody go, but that does happen because that's life. um okay, excellent. What I wanted to ask you this. So, what advice would you give to a brand new teacher coming in to Lindsay Elementary? Like you
So
only get
yeah.
you only get so many, pieces of advice, right? So, if you could whittle it down to one thing that you would want to share as advice with that brand new, just out of college, this is their first teaching gig, what would you tell them? Or what do you tell them, I should
What do
say?
I tell them? Yeah,
Yeah.
we do have a beginning of the year, orientation for our new teachers. Um, I would just say one step at a time. It boils down to relationships, building relationships. So you have to start there in everything that you do, even as an administrator. If they don't build relationships with their kids, they're never going to get buy-in with the students. So that's the number one piece, is to start there, and then from there everything else comes, right? So from there, then they can begin their classroom management. And if they can get their classroom management down at that point, then they can start to teach, because
Yeah.
you can't teach a crazy class.
Yeah.
And so they have to start to know what is going to make these kids click, right, and make them think. And this reward isn't going to work. This student only needs verbal praise, right? This student is
Hmm.
going to do great with verbal praise, but this student needs a sticker,
Yeah.
and right, and then this
Yeah.
student needs,
A skittle.
right. This student just needs to be like acknowledged, right?
Hmm.
And so every student's going to come in needing different things, and so they'll know that through building those relationships with
Yeah.
them. And then also that goes into our community, right, and our the parents. So once they get to know the parents and what the parents need, the really, really upset parent that calls and is super upset about one little thing, they just needed to be heard.
Hmm.
And they just wanted to hear what happened during the day and
Yeah.
communicated with. And so then the teacher knows from then on, they just needed to shoot a quick email to let them know what happened during the day. And then
Yeah.
they, that was going to help that parent.
Yeah. That's excellent advice. Excellent. And I hope that, um, boy, I hope that all of our teachers out there who are in middle school are listening. That is some sound advice. That is wonderful. I love that. Let me see. I wanted to ask you, what would it mean to you? Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you first. So that was great advice for the brand new teacher. What's the advice for a teacher who maybe 10 years in, 15 years in, and maybe they just find themselves and they're just struggling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe they're a little bit burnt out,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell that? What do you tell them?
So, I feel like it's not just the teachers that are 10 years and 15 years in, it's really all teachers all year, right? As we kind of go through this roller coaster. We're excited to come off a summer break. We're so excited. And then Christmas break, it's like, cannot get here fast enough,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so it's really remembering your why. Why did you start this to, to begin with, right? And if you don't know a why, or you don't have a why, you need to find one, because this is a hard job. And so it just boils down to that. We kind of reflect on that throughout the year and kind of remind each other. We begin every staff meeting that we have with talking about celebrations. What are small celebrations, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's at home in your personal life? Tell us about a celebration. And then some days no one wants to shout out and share that because you feel comfortable with your community. So it's turn and tell somebody something funny that happened this week. And
Yeah.
just remembering those little moments. We talked earlier about pre-K and how
Yeah.
much fun those kiddos are. And so even when I've had a hard day, of whether it's the million different things that could be hard in this position, I'll often go just sit in an amazing classroom, or I'll hear, which is a lot of classrooms here, or
Yeah.
pretty much all of them. But I get lost sometimes in just teachers teaching and watching them serve, like, deliver lessons, which is their passion. I can sometimes just sit there for a long time and be like, oh, I have a meeting, or I have to leave this classroom at this
Yeah.
point. So remembering their why and always falling back on that, because this is a hard job.
Awesome.
Um,
I love that.
yes,
Well,
exactly.
you read my book, I think
I
earlier
did.
earlier
Yes,
this
I
year,
did. Mm-hmm. Burnout to
from
brilliance.
burnout to brilliance. So, and we talk in there about passion, purpose, and perseverance, and how critical I think it is, probably now more than ever, for teachers to have a clear understanding of what their why is.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is not, I tell people all the time, becoming a teacher is not a job for the faint at heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. You really have to understand why you're doing this, because let's face it, you're not doing it for the money. Like, you could probably choose another profession where you're going to make a lot more money. Um, you're gonna encounter challenges that you just wouldn't encounter if you were working in corporate America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so is that why clear? And I find that the more clear that why is in teachers' minds, the more effective they become as teachers. And I don't want to just say like they become effective teachers, but they become transformational. I think not only for students, but for other teachers, for administration, for themselves. It just spreads, right? And I love that. So I love that you said know your why, or rediscover your why,
Yeah.
right? That becomes, I think, a pivotal thing for us to remember and to go back to. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, hey, now you guys understand why she's the best, right? You get it. You've heard it. So thank you so much for just being a great leader. And I always like to say thank you for leading from the front, because I think it's easy to lead from the middle of the pack. It's easy to lead from behind, but it's another thing entirely to be at the front as a leader. And that one of the things that I've noticed about you is that you lead from the front. You show an example. You are a servant leader. I think I've seen you show empathy to kids who are struggling, for a moment. And um, so thank you so much for that. I think that goes a long way.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate that.
this was awesome.
This was fun.
I loved it. And I hope we get to collaborate a little bit more, right?
Absolutely.
I'm really
Yeah.
hoping that we can collaborate on my next book.
I
So
will.
a lot of the research that I gathered for while I was subbing,
Mhm.
because I was really paying attention to school culture, classroom culture,
Mhm.
and that's my next book. So it'll be out next year. So
Okay.
looking for principals and teachers to collaborate with the book. So it's going to be a two-part book. The front side is going to be for administration. So how do you set school culture? And then the back of the book, when you turn it over, it's directly for teachers. How do you create classroom culture, and how do you marry those two cultures?
Mhm.
Right? How do you make sure that they're supportive of one another?
Mhm.
So looking for awesome collaborators, and I really can't think of a better person than Principal Stover. So uh, thank you so much, and
Absolutely.
I look forward to chatting some more down the road. And this was a fantastic
It's fun.
conversation. I
Thank you
really
for
enjoyed
having
it.
me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
It's
you
fun.
bet. All right, lifers. That's it for this episode. So um, go to the comments, go ahead and share it, like. You guys know what to do. Hit the bell. You guys know what you're doing. So look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, go out and live the life.